Okay, Kim, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Andrew.
You're
How
sitting
you
in the back blocks again.
I know.
I know. We hope you can
Feel
hear us
free to
out there. Interesting day today. Right to Disconnect is through and happening as we speak at the moment. So we'll,
lots of inquiries through. Everyone's a bit scared of it. But
yeah, we'll
not
talk
that
to you about
close.
some simple ideas around it, what you need to do, and it's really a reflection around how you govern employment relationships. We'll come to that. I think we've seen in the last week, not just the Petrarca issue with Melbourne Footy Club, but a number of footy clubs who clearly are not managing people who've been injured in the course of employment.
Yeah.
And his is probably the most obvious, isn't it? Because he
High profile.
ended up
Very
in
bad.
ICU, nobody came to visit him.
Yeah.
He felt isolated, it affected his mental health. This is a robust, strong, driven footballer.
Yeah.
And says, well, we're told he says, that he wants to go to another club.
Mm.
Thought, Kim, this is not a bad conversation, is it? When we talk about workers' compensation and engagement, the first thing we always talk about is, did the supervisor immediately go and see the person? Did they stay? Did fellow team members connect?
Yeah.
Because that brings people back to work.
Yeah, that's right.
And maintains the culture that you have internally.
Yeah.
But stand away.
Yeah. Well, when I did plaintiff work a long time ago, the one complaint that I always got from employees who never went back to work was, no one ever contacted me, no one ever checked in on me, no one found out if I was doing okay, no one offered me support, so why would I go back to an employer like that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. But I think also with Christian, he's a good guy and there's a lot of off-field behaviour that he doesn't like, and I think he's trying to distance himself from that. So equally for any employee though, workplace culture is very important.
Yeah, culture is always king, isn't it? So here you've got somebody who's driven, successful, the heart of a club, gets injured, nobody follows him up, looks back at the club and goes, do I really belong?
Yeah.
And makes a decision, maybe I don't. Now, we don't know what he's going to do, but I thought we're your plaintiff practice, but our workers' compensation practice constantly reminds us this need to connect to people, to engage with them the moment they're injured, whether it's psychological or physical, but be present.
Yeah.
And if you're present, often the psychological sequel just never happens. You know, it's physical injury, but they don't have a secondary psychological claim that sits above it. Leave them alone, and it definitely does. And the regulator likes that thing and definitely grabs hold of secondary psychological hazards. So, and that blows your premium.
Yeah. But I think too, even if someone is off work, and this applies equally to people on parental leave, if someone's leaving and you're having a lunch for them or an event, invite them in.
Yeah.
If you're having a strategy day, invite them in. Just let them still be a part of it and be engaged.
Now, on that note, I'd just like to say hello to Julia and congratulations on your baby. Julia's a past employee, but somebody we love a great deal.
Very exciting.
Very exciting. We'll let her know to watch this episode.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into I think the heading I've given is, bullshit excuse to dodge work.
I love this case. It's a bit
Talk about it, Kim. I just gave this case for you.
So we've got a forklift driver, so high-risk employee, on a final warning for failing a positive drug test, or failing a drug test. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Then his supervisor went to him 2 months after his final warning and said, you've got to do another drug test. And he said, oh, no, I'm unwell. I've shat myself. I've got to go home. And
didn't come back.
Didn't come back. He got, after an investigation, they did the right thing. They terminated him. He lodged an unfair dismissal claim. Commissioner said, you must comply with your drug and alcohol policies. They're there to keep people safe. So he didn't take it seriously. He could have cleaned up himself in the bathroom if he did indeed he did defecate. He could have come home back.
That's very good. That's very good. I've not heard you use the word defecate.
No,
good.
I'm not normally that polite, Andrew. That's why.
Just for me?
Yeah. But I guess the lesson in that is you've got to take these things seriously. If you're told to do a drug test, you must comply, and the risk of not is
and it's a bit like
termination.
Avoiding a drink drive test. It's more serious than actually being over the limit because you're deliberately breaching a direction to do it. So I think this is a solid drug and alcohol testing program that had been consulted and put in place. It was known and understood. The obligations were known and understood. So it was a lawful and reasonable direction all over Red Rover when you try and dodge it, really. Okay, that was fun, wasn't it? So I think we've got a few fun cases. I think could be the theme today. I just want to talk briefly about the 175,000 high income threshold for the independent contractors. I think that's what we've got up next, isn't it? So Closing the Loop has come in 26 August. One of the things it's talking about is the new jurisdiction around contractors, which go back to the old test. So it's not what the contract says, it's how you perform as a person doing the work. So it's on a bundle of different activities, like, do you have assets that are employed? Do you run your own business? All those sort of things. The old test is back and it's new again. But over $175,000, you can elect to be treated as a contractor, and there's obviously tax benefits in that for the contractors and benefits for the host as well under those circumstances. But it also means if you do that, it excludes the unfair termination jurisdiction that exists for contractors beneath the high income threshold. So again, like we're hearing this noise, the sky definitely is filled. Chicken Little's there going, it's terrible, Closing the Loop. That's pretty easy, that one, wasn't it? And there's a real opportunity there for the higher level contractors, particularly professional contractors that are used, who always fall over that, to make them elect in their contract that they are above the high income threshold and elect to be contractors, not employees. At that stage, it's over. Okay.
It's important to note, though, I think, with a lot of drivers, the money that they need to spend to maintain their vehicle is not taken into account in terms of that high income.
And look, it's also worth saying, just because somebody's beneath 175 doesn't make them an employee.
No,
just
they still have to prove that they are a contractor. Oh, sorry, that they're not.
Okay.
Other way.
So let's chase down our next case. Wow. What can I talk about? Poulter and the ACT Greens. Okay, so really simple case here. The ACT. I don't know what happened there, but my iPhone seems to have connected to the screen. The important part of this case was very simple. It was a person who brought an unfair dismissal claim. The ACT Greens said, look, there's only 12 of us in the ACT Greens, therefore we're a small business, therefore we've got a jurisdictional barrier to the claim that's being brought.
Because he was terminated within the 12 months.
Period, he said, well, wait a second, that's not right. ACT Greens is part of a series of associated entities, and there's more than 15 people in that. And not only that, the associated entities do have to comply with the rules and regulations around what they do and what they can and can't do. And what the court held, I think it was Deputy President Dean, said, well, if the entities need to comply and agree to behave in a particular way, then the associated entities under the Corporations Act applies, and therefore that's the one employer. If not, well, then if they can act with discretion, then the individual units will be the employer. And I guess I really chuck this case in just to remind people, workplace law is one law when we're dealing with workplace issues, but the corporations law describes what an officer is for the purpose of safety law. It describes what an associated entity is for the purpose of what is an employer. So don't think because you read the Fair Work Act, you get it, or you read the Safety Act, I understand that, because there is so many other bits of law that come into what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I thought it was a useful example for us to have a talk about. Okay, now we're up to our next one. Again, I think
it's a really good case.
I think Kim and I were speaking earlier, and one of the things that people forget is, as they're making people redundant or terminating people's employment, particularly making people redundant, there's ways that you can reduce the cost of the severance payment. And one of them is to deliberately go out, even to your competitors, and seek to place them as an employee. And if it's close enough, if it's a like job, then there's an argument you don't have to pay severance payment or all of severance payment. In this case, there were two people. There was a scheduler and there was an administrative staff. The administrative staff new job in the competitor was pretty dirty compared to the old job, which was more of a white collar.
Same job, same pay, but the work location, the work environment was not as nice. It was noisy, it was smelly and dusty. So moving from more of a white collar to blue collar.
I think it was an extra 18 minutes drive for the scheduler. It was less responsibility.
It was no longer in charge.
But sometimes I just love the Fair Work Commission. They look at all that and they go, no, good employer, and did the best they could. So, we're going to reduce it down by 30%. So, 70%, down to 30%. What a great story for employers. And, in our job, when people move on from our business, we deliberately seek to place them with other people or support their pursuit of other work. And we've had recent success in doing just that.
Yeah.
I think you've got to understand as an employer, if you want to maintain your brand, if you want to be good, and if you want the culture inside the business to trust you, you're good the way in, you're good while people are here, and you're even better on the way out. And then it lands in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And I don't think a lot of people would realise that the redeployment consideration can be to look outside their own business.
Yeah, and this isn't one, I'm not trying to do us out of a job, but this is a factual issue. Yeah. So it's not one you need lawyers in there. They can tell you what the structure should be and they spend a couple of hours, but you can do it yourself and you might save $30,000 or $40,000. So I just want you to think about it because I think it's a beautiful case that demonstrates what when good employers act well, there are some real benefits. All right. Gee, we're going pretty quickly. Out of hours conduct. Well,
I don't know how this guy thought he could get away with this.
It's not easy. So this guy sent 50 texts out of hours complaining about his manager, who was a very decent guy, and everyone agrees with that.
To his manager.
To his manager. They were threatening, they were rude, they were abrasive, they were undermining his job.
Yep.
And he ran the argument that, well,
when they terminated him, unfair dismissal.
He said, but I wasn't at work when I did it.
Yeah,
so how can you do it?
Yeah.
Now, the reasoning in this case is a bit all over the place. So can we just stay with the first principles? Rosen Telstra is a well-known case that deals with out-of-work conduct. In this case, no matter what he says, if the nature of his conduct threatened, harmed or hurt a person whilst they're at work, and sending those out of hours, so when the person is at work, they feel that and the other person is present there as well. At that stage, it's all over. It's actually inside work when it's occurring. But even on Rosen Telstra, which is outside of work, doesn't make them incompatible with the nature of the working relationship they have. Absolutely. So done. Is it inconsistent with his contract of employment to do something? Absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Is it a fundamental breach of what his obligations are? Yes, it is. So everything with Rosen Telstra, it's a breach. But the analysis here is much simple. It was happening at work because that's where the person had to be, knowing what this person said when the other guy was in the room. And the commissioner just went, big backhander. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So
just be good to people.
Yeah, be good to people. It's not hard. Yes. And remember, don't drink and text. That's I think a fundamental rule, isn't it? So I don't know if that was the case here, by the way, but every time you think of going on social media or texting, apply your own breathalyzer and go, I say things I shouldn't say after one beer or one glass of red wine. So don't do it. Okay. What are we up to, Kim?
Well, this is moving into what happens when you drink too much as well.
Yeah. So this is the skid steer case. Yeah. Pretty awful case where a group of guys who were working sat down, drank a lot of grog.
At the end of the
working day. One of them got in a skid steer, drove around in circles, then tried to play chicken with one of his mates and killed him. And I want you to understand regulator thinking at this stage. You cannot prosecute this guy for industrial manslaughter because he's not an officer. So what happens? He is prosecuted under the Crimes Act for manslaughter and gets 7 years.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to think the regulator is limited in the tools they use by the safety legislation. They can go to the DPP or OPP, depending on which jurisdiction, they can say, look, can you prosecute this, please? Because it's very clear to us that this is a crime.
Yeah.
The threshold or the test is slightly harder to prove than under the safety legislation. But this was much more than reckless endangerment. This was such an obvious breach of an obligation with an intention to create that risk all over.
Yeah.
So we've got it on today just to show you. Don't think the regulator is standing there with a group of levers that sit under safety law. They can't do anything else. They absolutely can against an employee or a supervisor or a manager who's not an officer by just stepping out into the Crimes Act. As I said, a bit harder to prove, but in this case, the organisation was charged as well under safety law. So everyone got charged just like normal, but to get this guy properly, they went to the Crimes Act.
Good.
Okay. I think we're up to the main topic, aren't we?
No, one more.
One more. Oh, there you go.
Oh, this is the one we talked about a couple of weeks ago where an electric gate failed and fell on an employee when he was trying to manoeuvre it.
Yeah. So can we step back a bit just so we go to general principles again? So this happened on common property. So the where the gate fell was common property, which means there was no tenant who had control over that land. That land was seized by the body corporate as a whole as its land and managed by the strata title manager. Yeah. And it's the strata title manager who got $150,000 fine in the end. And that they were treated as the owner. In other words, they were treated as a person who owned that property and had the delegated authority to ensure that it was safe, to do appropriate risk assessments, we call SWIMs, to ensure immediate action was taken given the nature of the risk. Now, most strata title agents would never think that's their obligation. They go, yeah, sure, I have to do it, but there is a strata committee who makes those decisions. I don't really have to get involved in that. I do what they tell me to do. Not so. So it dramatically changes strata developments and the obligations and the insurance, I think, going forward for strata agents will go up dramatically as a result of it. But it reminds us all that when you're an occupier of land and you have structure on that land that can create risk, that suffers an injury to that structure, you're on liability straight away. Don't worry about the person who's using it. You're on liability. So interesting and good case, and once again shows that this nonsense around occupier liability, which is more of a general negligence type of argument that you're running, has nothing to do with safety law at all. Now we are definitely on to the main topic.
Everyone's been waiting for this.
Have you been waiting for this? Have you? I think we've been waiting for the bomb to go off.
Yeah.
Can I say to you, it is just a bunch of rot. I listened to the AI group talking about it being criminal. Well, let's press the button first. No, it's not. We listened to the union saying, look, this is always what should have happened, and it's a great thing, and it's going to change the world. No, it's not. All it is that employees, under certain circumstances, have a right not to respond to any form of contact that occurs, so long as what they do it's reasonable.
Yeah.
So if you look at the seniority of the person, the nature of the work that they undertake, the contractual structure of that work, the requirement to work extra hours as required outside of duties.
If they're duly compensated.
Yeah, they're properly compensated to do that work. There's a whole series of factors. So now you know that, we go, well, what are the changes I need to make? Well, it's a governance step, really. You go and look at your contracts and see, are they being paid over award? If they're award-based, is the compensation sufficient to meet award expectations for any overtime? Do all that sort of stuff. To do that test. Do you have a policy around out-of-hours work and what it exists and why the reasons exist? Yeah. So do you have a policy that says very clearly that, look, out-of-hours conduct for these classifications will be required for the following reasons and to provide business reasons, but to ensure that people are adequately remunerated for it and not otherwise connected or engaged when it's outside of these. If you do that, it's nothing. Like, it's such a small bit of infrastructure change and discussion. But you would think the world has changed. Yeah. And the reality is, if Kim was a young lawyer and I started ringing up and saying, look, it's 9 o'clock, I need you back in here, that'd be a psychological hazard, okay? Because it's very unlikely I do. But if I did that and tried to exploit the young lawyer and put excessive workloads and demands, safety law already provides that protection. So the answer is, the law is already there. It's a more diffuse. It's not as tangible as this closing the loop change. But it is a complete nonsense to think that it will change the world greatly. It'll create a more respectful world, a world with greater clarity. I accept all those things. But in governance terms, what have I got to do? It's really simple. Yeah. And you must speak honestly and consult with your employees now, because this is a change and safety law requires you to consult. So this change is coming through. Hey, Kim, you're well and truly above an award, and the reason you're paid is for these reasons. So we will be contacting, and obviously we'll be respectful. In our business, after 7:30, we send a text to each other to say, I'm going to give you a ring. We do those things. Why do we do it? Because Kim might send a text back and say, well, don't. I'm in the middle of dinner with the kids. Give me a ring at 8:30. This is all it's required to do. So I don't know about you, but I'm underwhelmed by the change that's coming through.
Everyone's a bit scared by it. Everyone's a bit confused by it as to what it means. But it only means that if there is a dispute, try and resolve it internally. If you can't resolve it internally, you can go to the Fair Work Commission. There's no penalty unless the Fair Work Commission makes an order and you contravene it.
And there's the other issue, that if it's not a reasonable requirement and you start to punish or treat that person adversely,
It creates a general protection.
General protections. It's a workplace right that is now in the legislation, which can be defended by a general protections claim. And can I say the difficulty with that is you have a reverse onus. So you've got to demonstrate that the requirement was reasonable and the misconduct you complain of is misconduct in the terms of what is misconduct, and therefore it was appropriate to do it. All that obligation rests upon you. So I'm not a big person with lots of paperwork, but I would like you to do this governance review of the relevant paperwork. I would like you to consult so there's clarity, and then you're never going to have these problems. Okay.
And just keep in mind too, it only applies to employers 15 or over at the moment.
Yeah.
We've already had that inquiry this week.
Yeah.
Smaller employers doesn't come in for another 12 months.
And it doesn't affect if you're a high income, over the high income threshold, you're still caught by it. There's a legislative change that's coming. Although there's amendments being made to all awards, it doesn't exclude you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Straightforward, don't be scared.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's have a bit of a glance at the main topic. Okay.
All right.
Here we go. Oh, disappeared. Come on, back, Darren. Sophie, bring us back. What's happening? There we are.
Darren was an IT manager for an online super fund called Supergood. He worked flexibly 3 days a week from home. Clients needed to access Super Choices, an online investment portal on the Supergood website 24 hours a day to get the best results on their self-managed super funds. Any downtime could mean significant losses for clients. The changing requirements of clients and challenge of competitors meant Supergood was constantly updating the Super Choices portal for reporting and client functionality. Darren had signed a contract that explained the nature of the business and paid him a significant wage above the classification level 6 under the Banking, Finance and Insurance Award. The contract required him to work such additional hours outside of hours as required. His contract was not an award-based annualisation contract, rather a common law contract with a set-off. Darren was inclined to work his extra hours at work and protect his family time at home as much as he could. Over the year, there were several payroll periods where his hours worked were so high that based on the award, he received less than he was entitled under the award. But over the year, he was paid over $32,000 above the award classification pay. He was above the high income threshold and the contract said he was award free. On the 27th of August, 24, Darren went home on time. He was sitting down for dinner and his phone rang. It was his boss. He ignored the call. As far as he was concerned, he had disconnected for the day. The boss sent urgent messages saying the system was down and they needed him urgently. He ignored it. The calls and messages increased and the frustration of his non-response grew with it. He sent an email back saying, "I have disconnected, see you tomorrow." The following day, he was directed to a meeting with the CEO and HR manager. He was asked to show cause why his employment should not be terminated for significant risk caused by his non-attendance. He walked out of the meeting against an instruction to stay with his support person before it finished, saying he was being bullied and treated adversely for exercising a protected attribute. The employer terminated Darren's employment. It's a good case study.
Yeah. Did Darren have the right to disconnect?
No.
Like Darren, man, senior, paid a lot, specific job, which meant controlling a system. Yeah. Given clear directions, had a contract that acknowledged that need. Yeah, no chance at all. Was Supergood entitled to expect a response and require him to work? Yes, it was.
Yes, they were.
So there you go. Was there any breach of the award? Really good argument here. The breach, because a common law contract is only effective in relation to award-based payments where you are paid equal to or above in any payroll period. The Federal Ombudsman's unlikely to prosecute if over a year you are paid more, but the answer is it's a technical breach of the award, and there is an argument then about the application of the high income threshold. Not an easy argument, but I'm putting it out there just to show you where the risk sits. Would Darren have a good general protections claim? Not at all. Not at all. So by not being reasonable what he did, he doesn't have a workplace right. Darren's referred to as a protected attribute because it's only just come in. He didn't know what the law was, but it's a workplace right. But as I've said before, the difficulty is there's no doubt Darren would run it because there's a reverse onus of proof in general protections claims, which means you have to prove that it was unreasonable what he did. And any failing in documentation, consultation, those sort of issues erodes your capacity. And most definitely the decision to terminate was because he disconnected. So it goes directly to the attribute. Okay? What are you up to? If there was no set-off clause or clause having expectations of being available, would Darren have a good workers' compensation claim?
Yeah, he would actually.
Just remember, workers' compensation is Gumby law. Let's be honest about it. So they're not going to apply the law as it should be applied. But even if it was applied correctly, the failure to warrant within it or to say within it that there is this expectation of extra work would not only create a workers' compensation claim, but probably a general protections claim as well. So it's definitely going to get a workers' comp claim up there. Okay.
So worth looking at your contracts for your high-income employers.
Yeah, and always have the clause that excludes, and it means you just got to model it carefully. That's all. Before you do it, go through each payroll period. If you're seasonal, you're really looking at annualised salary. If it's not seasonal-based work, then common law contracts are a much better way of doing, so long as you pay sufficient in each payroll period. As Darren was above the high income threshold, does that mean he's exempt from the right to disconnect? No, it doesn't. So there you go. That's an easy answer. I think we're there, We've got one more, have we? What's the next question?
Oh, it's up there.
If
Darren was an IT junior, would he have a right to disconnect in the same circumstances, particularly if he was paid on the award?
Yes, he would. Okay, why? Because he's not getting compensated for it. He's got a low skill base. He doesn't have set-off clauses. He is exactly who the right to disconnect does apply. Yeah. So, yes, he would. There you go. I reckon it was an interesting day, wasn't it? It's good. Fascinating topics, and lovely to have you along, by the way. I don't know who I've got with me next week. Is it me who's doing it?
No, you and Nina are doing it.
I'm doing it. I must be coming in early. All right, thumbs up, and thanks very much, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.